What is going on, Cardano community? Happy Friday. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Welcome to the channel. My name is Fareed, and today I'm going to be joined by Marty from the Coinecta project. Marty, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. It's Friday. It's nice and calm where I'm at right now, and I'm looking forward to my weekend. How about yourself?
Yeah, same here. Take a break from a long week.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this interview is going to be a nice introduction to your weekend. I'm excited to have you here. We're going to be chatting about what you're bringing to Cardano, which is going to be the Coinecta project, which is going to be aiming to be a launchpad being built on Cardano. So what I like to do before I jump into any of my interviews is just briefly give the viewers a rundown of what we're going to be touching on. And so let me go ahead and quickly do that. And then we're going to jump into exactly what you guys are building for Cardano and exactly what we can expect from Coinecta. So as a part of today's video, we're going to be touching on a brief overview of Coinecta. Then we're going to jump into some of the benefits as well as some of the criteria and requirements for projects that are looking to get listed on their Launchpad platform. And then we're going to jump into some different topics surrounding the transparency and potentially the security of the Coinecta platform. Next, we're going to touch on some of the support and assistance that the Coinecta project or Coinecta platform is going to be providing to some of the builders in the ecosystem. And then we're going to talk about exactly what fail-safes are in place for any projects that may or may not deliver. That said, Marty, I would like to get started with a brief bit of background surrounding your experience, if you don't mind.
Of course, yeah. So I've been in crypto for about 10 years now. More as a hobby in the beginning. I was mining early on, and in recent years, I decided to create a project on the Ergo blockchain called ErgoPad. That was around end of 2021, probably September 2021. We were building a mining pool, and the people I was doing it with, we decided to make ErgoPad. So ErgoPad was a launchpad, or is a launchpad on the Ergo blockchain. And we had some success over there. So far we've launched about 10 projects in the past year and a bit, since I believe our first one was April of 2022. It took some time to build the smart contracts and build that platform. So since then, we also have created a project called Paideia, which is a DAO management software suite. That's in beta right now, internal beta, and should be live quite soon for public testing. And that's also on the Ergo blockchain. However, we'd like to release a Cardano version. And now we're trying to bring Coinecta to the Cardano blockchain. So that's a bit about where we've come from.
Interesting. I like that. Short and sweet. So a few things that I just picked up on. So this is not your first rodeo. You've been building for quite a bit. But one thing that I did forget to mention for the viewers is that you're actually going to be a founder and a developer, right? So you're not just kind of guiding the development for Coinecta, but you're actually getting your hands dirty and doing some of this development as well. So that's an interesting approach. You normally don't see a lot of founders also being developers, but I really like that. So I think you obviously understand both bits of the process, right? Where you have to build, but then also the management side of things. So understanding a little bit of your background, do you mind touching on what Coinecta is and providing us an overview of exactly what the platform is aiming to do?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. As you know, part of the reason as a founder in a small tech startup, you kind of have to wear more than one hat. So that's kind of where we come from. We've been running really lean with ErgoPad for a little while because we started at the end of a bull market, and kind of it's just been bleeding for a little while. So we decided let's try to spend as little money as possible and survive this bear market and be around for the next bull, so we can be nice and prepared. So yeah, so I wear more than one hat. I do help with marketing and development of mostly front end, project management, everything. You kind of have to. In a small team, there's only about 5 or 6 of us right now. So, but to your other question, Coinecta is going to be quite similar to how we did ErgoPad as a launchpad on the Ergo blockchain. Coinecta is going to be a similar thing on the Cardano blockchain. So having been, I mean, I found Cardano before I found Ergo, and even when I started getting into Cardano in mid last bull market, uh, the launch pads never really did anything on Cardano. So you had like AdaPad and a handful of others, and they all launched BSC tokens, and they never even launched Cardano tokens. And I don't think any of the IDOs they did ever launched anything on Cardano. So I have that sort of as the basis, and then now a few of the other launch pads that started off Cardano specific are becoming more chain agnostic, and for some that's a selling feature, but for me, I want to focus on Cardano specifically. Uh, we also want to give an opportunity for projects that launch on ErgoPad or on Coinecta to launch on both ErgoPad and Coinecta. So the EUTXO model of the Cardano and Ergo blockchains seem to me to be a true iteration on what Bitcoin started. Uh, for me, Ethereum's accounting model was a nice proof of concept that smart contracts can work, but some of the drawbacks, such as gas fees, prevent me from really enjoying using it. So I like being here with the EUTXO crew, and we'll stick to Cardano and Ergo for now.
Nice, nice. And so that was actually a little bit of news to me. Again, your background surrounding ErgoPad and the platforms you guys have built there. And so, as you mentioned, I know that we have had, or we do have right now, launch pads that are going blockchain agnostic, touching on Arbitrum and touching on Polygon. But I don't think that anybody has touched on Ergo as a whole, right? So I think this would be a first, which is good. And then what you also touched on too was the initial platforms that were here, like during the bull run, right? I think Cardano's so new that there really wasn't a lot to launch on launch pads, a while back. Now we're seeing the rise of DeFi. Now we have a ton of dexes. We've got a ton of wallets. We've got a ton of marketplaces. And there's just so many different platforms coming online now that I really do think that the value proposition that a launchpad is now bringing actually does make sense because, again, we're now starting to get that infrastructure to really support things moving forward, right? So I think, again, looking back last year, maybe that was a little bit early, but I definitely
Fair
could
enough.
see use cases for launch pads moving forward. And I think you guys are coming in at just the right time. So let's touch a little bit on some of the benefits of Coinecta. Do you mind kind of elaborating on how Coinecta is going to work and how this differs from traditional fundraising methods?
Sure. Yeah. So Coinecta, I guess we can compare to other launch pads, and we can also compare to like legacy financial systems or uh, centralized finance, I guess. So, in comparison to other launch pads, in my experience, they do a whitelist, and then you send money to, or you send, Ethereum or Cardano or whatever it is to an address, uh, and they keep track of who sent money in, and then they, you know, in a centralized way, they release the tokens, and if there's a vesting schedule, they send them out manually uh, when the time comes. So what we did on Ergo and what we'd like to do on Cardano is we built smart contracts which control the vesting schedule. Uh, and so what that means is when you launch a token, those tokens get locked in these vesting contracts. And in order to get those tokens, you have to send money to a smart contract. And that smart contract then sends you an NFT that represents the tokens you're eligible to unlock. And using that NFT, you can access those tokens as they unlock based on what the smart contract decides. So your NFT says you're entitled to this many tokens, and they unlock following this schedule, and you can redeem them as they unlock. In comparison to like traditional or legacy financial systems, or investing in platforms without blockchain, uh, I think blockchains enables you to access things throughout the globe. It kind of is a borderless technology. Uh, it doesn't really ask questions about who you are or where you are, and it allows us to create communities that transcend specific borders or specific people, like accredited investors, for example. Um, so we're doing that by launching through Our company is based in El Salvador, and in El Salvador, no token is considered a security. That's kind of the basis of their law, is that a crypto token is never a security. Uh, and their law enables, if you register as a digital asset service provider, their law enables a lot of things that I don't think that you can do in traditional finance. And so, using that opportunity, we'd like to bring, new technology to crypto and make it more accessible to the end user, and hopefully encourage adoption that way, uh, providing decentralized finance, which, even if somebody says no, you can't do that, it's decentralized and peer to peer, meaning that if you decide to access it, you take your own responsibility into your own hands, and it provides that freedom.
Yeah, I really like that. And a few things I just want to kind of respond to. When you were just talking about the decentralization aspect of things, we have to take the good and the bad, right? So, being that we're working in a decentralized environment, like you mentioned, everything is done permissionless. But you also then have, people that try to take advantage of that because they know that
Hmm.
everything is permissionless by, for example, launching stake pools or launching platforms that may mimic something that's legitimate. And unfortunately, whoever's actually building something legitimate doesn't have any control over that, right? So I think it's a double-edged sword. It obviously allows for people that are in certain areas that never had instruments or never had financial tools to get access to those tools now. But then also, again, it opens up the doors for potential bad actors. So we got to take the good with the bad there. Now, one thing that you touched on was El Salvador, in the fact that you guys are going to be based out of El Salvador. And over there, nothing is considered a security in terms of tokens. Number one, I really wish that the US could follow what El Salvador is doing in that sense. But the number two, I think that's a really smart strategic move to make sure that you guys are not going to go ahead and catch any snags later on, right? I think right now everybody's really watching what the SEC's been doing and all the lawsuits that have been going on, which that's a whole nother conversation. But that's the first time, or this is the first time that I'm speaking with somebody who has a project that's going to be based out of El Salvador, taking advantage of the regulatory space, like you just mentioned. So that's a pretty cool thing to hear. So now that we better understand, like you mentioned, some of the differences between traditional investing and what you guys are doing here on the blockchain, can we maybe touch on some of the criteria and some of the expectations that you, Coinecta, are expecting from projects that you guys are looking to onboard, right? So let's say that I'm a project trying to launch a IDO, and I come to Coinecta. What are the requirements that you guys are looking for from a project?
Yeah, so we'd like to ensure that, if a project does launch through Coinecta, obviously, in a way, we're putting our name behind that project. Um, so we want to be responsible in how we do that and how we pursue, uh, how we take that into account. So, for instance, if a project comes to us, we're going to assess, who's on the team, what is their experience like, how far along are they, does the white paper give a clear outline of their plan? Does the roadmap sort of explain how they're going to actually achieve it? Have they built good tokenomics, and will that take into account enough funding to get them to the finish line? And do they have the experience to execute those plans? Um, we aren't doing that alone. We'd like to bring on advisors that will help us with this process. We've been speaking to a group called CRCI, and what they've done is they've kind of broken it down into a first principles approach, where they do the research for you. So what they do is they analyze a project from both a bottom up, and a top down approach, where rather than going on YouTube and listening to people's opinions about it, they go through all the details. Who's the team, what is their experience, uh, what is outlined in the white paper, and does it cover sort of everything? I mean, for example, if you were to create a project and just say, we want to create the next social media platform to compete with Facebook, it's like, okay, that's nice, that's a short little blurb, but what are the details? How do you break it down, and how do you in what ways are you capable of doing that? Have you outlined it? So we want to go into fine details, into granular details, and really analyze what the project is presenting, and we'll make a decision based on that and the analysis that these other parties, our advisors will provide to us.
Nice. I like that. This CRCI platform reminds me of ScatDAO on Cardano. If you're not familiar with them, I highly recommend you go ahead and check them out. But I think they're in the same business where what they do is basically take a look at projects building on the network and they do an in-depth review and they provide like a full report after the fact to let you know exactly what their confidence is in the project. And then they also do a similar rating score, right? So in terms of data points or metrics that they use, I'm not sure how closely that lines up with CRCI, but I'll definitely recommend that you go ahead and check out the ScatDAO platform, and maybe you guys can also partner up there. I just wasn't sure if CRCI is Cardano specific or if they're blockchain agnostic, but I know for sure that ScatDAO is doing something very similar here within the Cardano ecosystem. Now, to that point, I think vetting is going to be instrumental, right? Making sure that platforms that you're bringing on or making sure that projects that you're bringing on have been fully vetted and that they are doing what they say they are, right? I think crypto already has quite the reputation when it comes to scams and rug pulls. And it's been interesting for me personally watching what different platforms and what different people are doing to try and reduce the potential of a quote unquote rug. There's another platform, which I think is a project, and what they've been doing is a little bit of KYC related stuff, right? So, to what you just mentioned with CRCI, are you guys planning on doing any sort of background checks, any sort of like personal identity verification to also make sure that people are who they say they are when you're bringing them onto the Coinecta platform?
Yeah, I think for us that's going to be very important going forward because you know, working with El Salvador and the government there, they very strongly believe in AML compliance and KYC. That's something that the government there is pushing hard on. When we first started, we weren't sure sort of where they were at with that, and now they've put the policies together. And so, one of the requirements is that we have an AML compliance officer as actual part of our staff. It can't just be a consultant. They have to be an actual staff member of our company. They need a bachelor degree. They need at least 2 years experience directly related to AML compliance. And so if we're doing that for our clients, I mean, definitely we should be doing that for the projects that launch on our platform. And also, having said all that, we're going to encourage them to look to register as an El Salvador corporation because, it seems to be working well for us. The country seems to be very receptive to new crypto technologies and new crypto projects. And there may even be grants in place in the country for projects like that. So we will encourage others to follow suit. Um, I think when you combine the freedom that they offer, but also with the safety and compliance that they want to follow through with it kind of goes well because you don't just want the Wild West where anyone can launch a token, say they're going to do something, and then never do it. I mean, one of the good things about regulation is that it does protect investors when done correctly, when it's not just a false reasoning that is really meant to protect just rich people, right? But when it's done correctly with the real intent to protect investors, then I think regulation can be a very good thing. So we will follow based on what our AML compliance officer decides. We'll probably follow that to a T.
Awesome to hear. And I think that gives reassurance to the people that are going to be investing in IDOs using Coinecta. And then what you also mentioned there at the very end in terms of encouraging people to also register in El Salvador, I think that makes more than sense, right? Because again, if you guys are going to be there, you guys are going to have certain rules and regulations applying to you. And it would only make sense that the people that you're also onboarding also have the same exact rules and regulations applying to them. Otherwise, I could definitely see that getting very, very messy very, very quickly. So now that we're kind of touching on KYC, AML, rug pulls, etc., let's touch on maybe the worst case scenario, right? So let's say that a platform comes to Coinecta and for some reason, they're just not able to follow through. you know, how do you guys plan on treating platforms like this? And I know right now you guys are in the very early stages of building, but do you have a plan in place to make sure that platforms aren't able to do this and get away scot free?
Yeah, so I may have mentioned that just briefly before, but one thing I'd like to implement in the future is sort of a kind of in partnership with the DAO management software I mentioned earlier, where people can put or projects can put their treasury into a smart contract that releases it based on either a time frame or maybe like let's say your roadmap says that by Q2 you're going to have X portion of your project complete. Uh, and we'll also be encouraging people to be open source. So, the community will be able to look at that and assess that. So let's say you wanted to finish, your MVP by Q2, and you said, this is what we're going to do, and we want to raise this much money to do that. And then after MVP, we want to add these upgrades, and that will cost this much money. So, at Q2, your time's up. Have you completed that MVP? And if yes, and if the community has a chance to assess that and they say, you know what, yes, they have completed the MVP, let's release the next round of funding. That could all be done with smart contracts and could be done with DAO voting. So it could also add utility to your token. So, for instance, you put your treasury that you raised from the community behind the DAO management software. And then each quarter, there was a proposal that the community could vote on that says, they've achieved their goals, they've met their promises, release the next quarter worth of funding. And that could be all voted on chain. So, I mean, that's not going to be day one, but that is something that we'd like to implement in the future to help with accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really going to be key for you guys, and I'm sure you're more than aware of this, to plan for things like that, right? Obviously, we would love for everything to work out as expected the first time, but we're in crypto and we know that, a lot of these projects are startups. And I want to say it's something like upwards of like 90 percent of startups do fail, right? So obviously
Yeah.
do your own research, and you guys are going to do your best to vet projects early on. But I think it is a case that you guys have to plan for. One thing that you just touched on too that I find really interesting, I interviewed Jan Orlings from Deep Funding, which is going to be a platform as a part of the AGIX or the Singularity Net ecosystem. And they're basically providing projects with funding similar to Project Catalyst, which I'm sure that you're well aware of. Now, some of the things that he touched on when it comes to some of the mechanics that they use was a milestone based approach as well. So I really like the fact that you mentioned that too, right? Because a lot of times in the space, people like to do things based strictly off of time. And I'm sure that you're more than aware, again, that in the regular development space, whether you're in Web 2 or even in Web 3, a lot of times people are not able to deliver strictly based on time, right? Normally, platforms need a little bit of time. They have bugs, they have issues, and that I think is just a part of development. But I think doing things based off of milestones and having those be extremely clear is going to be key in order to make sure, like you said, that before you guys unlock the next bit of funding or bit of tokens, that the team has delivered on what they said that they would be delivering on before you guys move any further. Again, I think it takes some of the pressure off of the teams, especially when you're talking about timeframes, because that would then potentially put them in a place where they rush to get something out just to meet the timeline or just to meet the deadlines, as opposed to actually getting a functional product out there that meets the milestone criteria. So that was just a piece that I touched on, or that you touched on there, that I really kind of agree with, which is the approach of taking a look at milestones and taking a look at deliverables, not necessarily a deadline or a due date.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, even especially when you're doing new things, it's so difficult to really determine, what really is the scope of this thing. Like with our Paideia software, we're like 6 months behind. But it's just because it was it's such a big project. It's so difficult to know. Like, there's so many unknown unknowns when you're doing new things. I mean, as we were building it, some new technology came out on Ergo that actually facilitated a lot of the extra things that we wanted to do. So it's like, well, let's use that and let's kind of redo things a little bit to take advantage of that. So, there's many unknown unknowns in development, especially with new technology. So yeah. And just another thing you mentioned, 90% of startups fail. I think the number I've heard is 1 in 20. So, I mean, there are a lot of parallels between investing in a crypto project and investing in like startups in Silicon Valley. It's very much there's quite a bit of similarities. And so it's like when you do invest in these projects, you have to think about it. This is seed funding. This is the very beginning oftentimes, and most of the time they don't even have an MVP done. So, there are going to be failures. One thing is, let's say we do implement that milestone uh, feature. What happens if they don't meet the milestone and the community decides to not give them any further funding? We'll have to think of a way there that we predetermine sort of how those funds are then distributed back to the early investors and how that's going to work. So it'll be some thinking and a lot of figuring out,
Yeah.
experimentation.
Right, right. And just for the viewers again, you guys are at a very early stage, right? So I think this is the time that you guys need to be thinking about this, not necessarily when you're 1 or 2 weeks out from mainnet launch. So I think it's completely okay and it's completely understandable that you guys are still trying to work through these mechanics and work through these different scenarios and use cases that may potentially occur. So I did have two last questions, which were somewhat related to the vesting of the smart contracts, which I kind of feel like you've hammered on here pretty well. So I kind of want to substitute them for more general questions
No
surrounding your
problem.
roadmap, if that's okay. So yeah, let's kind of just touched on where you guys are. And again, I know we just got done talking about deadlines, scope creep, and all these different things that can really kind of eat into your schedule. But giving us some really rough estimates. What can we expect in terms of when you guys may actually have something that's out there, whether it's on the test net or even on the mainnet? Again, very loosely speaking here, we're not going to hold you to it.
Well, full disclosure, we haven't started writing the smart contracts yet. We have them on Ergo. We've had meetings with multiple people on who are experienced on Cardano. So we've actually got 3 teams who have bid on the writing the smart contracts. That'll be kind of a small part of the full thing. Part of it will be designing, how the platform's going to work, which is a lot of that's already done. And a lot of it will be the UX design, which I'm working with somebody on right now. Um, and then also, part of the platform is obviously onboarding the projects and putting together what we talked about today, which is sort of how do we vet the projects and how do we ensure that good projects are launching. Beyond that, we are working closely with lawyers in El Salvador to complete the process of registering for a digital asset service provider license. Uh, they aren't even taking applications until the end of June for companies that aren't already registered and operating in El Salvador. So we're kind of on hold there. We're hiring an AML compliance officer and building our AML compliance policy. So there's a lot of things kind of spinning a lot of plates at the same time, but the development itself of the smart contracts should be quite short. I think 1 to 2 months.
Awesome to hear.
Um, since
Go
we've
ahead.
already designed it and we've designed it on Ergo, it works on Ergo. There won't be a lot of new stuff going on there, and even on Ergo, it only took us 1 month to build in the
Nice.
first place. So that's sort of that's kind of like the last step across the finish line. I think a lot
Hmm.
of the other stuff is in play right now. So
Got it. Got it. And I just want to kind of reiterate a lot of what you're talking or touching on in terms of how this is going to work and all of that is on your website, which is at coinecta.fi. Now, I'm actually taking a look at the website right now and I see, Coinecta Finance is going to be listed there as an upcoming IDO. So, do you mind maybe just kind of touching on the utility of the CNCT token and how that ties in into the greater picture, which is the actual Coinecta Launchpad?
yeah, so Connecta token is going to be, or CNCT Connect token is going to be our token on the Cardano blockchain. Uh, and the way it works is if you want to invest in the projects that are launching on the Coinecta platform, you'll stake your Coinecta token or Coinecta LP token. So that'd be like Connecta and ADA LP tokens. Uh, and when you stake those tokens, you not only do you get your distribution of additional tokens based on the emission schedule. There's also bonuses for different things. Like if you do the LP pair, you get 2.5x rather than just the single emission. But also, when you stake tokens, if you reach a staking tier, you gain pool weight, which is what that means is, let's say there's 100,000 tokens for a given project that we're releasing. Your pool weight determines what percent of that 100,000 tokens you can then purchase. So having and staking the Coinecta token is sort of your membership in the Coinecta platform, and it gives you access to those IDOs.
Got it. Got it. And I'm sure that as you guys actually get ready to launch the IDO for the Coinecta token, that you guys will continue to release more information surrounding that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
again, I want to thank you, Marty, here for joining me here tonight. I don't want to continue hammering you with questions knowing that you're at such an early stage. What I really wanted this to be was an introduction. Obviously, this is the first time that you and I are meeting, but also an introduction to the Cardano community, given the fact that you're coming and you have a lot of experience within the Ergo platform or the Ergo network. And so hopefully this was a nice and simple introduction for you as well. I definitely enjoyed it. I've got definitely a lot of more questions that I want to ask you, and I would love to have you on here for a follow-up. And so in closing of today's video, I would just maybe ask you, is there any sort of closing thoughts or any sort of key takeaways that you want viewers of today's video to kind of walk away with?
I think the main thing I want to say is come engage with us and ask questions in our chats. Um, you know, we love to answer questions. I want to be always transparent with the community. Um, I don't know how other people do it, but if you ask me a question, if you come into Telegram or Discord, we're always in there. We're always happy to answer any questions you have. And we also really value feedback from the community. So if you ask, if you come into our ErgoPad chat and you ask the people there, anytime somebody's brought something up and made a suggestion, we always actually take the time to listen to it and think about it and, you know, decide whether or not that makes sense to implement. So we want the community to be a big part of this. We're doing this partly because, I don't think it's right that certain people are allowed to invest in seed round funding and certain people are not. I also think that it's wrong that certain people in the globe don't have access to global financial systems or certain financial systems. I think that we should support each other in this community and grow together and work together and invest in projects together that will benefit all of us. So I think the best thing we can do for Cardano is create more accessible tools. DeFi exists. We can do it. It works, but can your grandma use it? Can your mom use it? Can like your non-tech savvy friend download an app and access it? Can somebody in a country that doesn't speak English have access to it? Maybe we need to make some tools that make sense from different cultural perspectives. So come join the community, get involved, bring your feedback, and make suggestions. We'd love to hear from you.
I love it. I think your mission is spot on, bringing accessibility and providing people with opportunities that they've never had before. One thing that I've taken away from this interview is that I need to go ahead and dive deeper into the Ergo community, and maybe I can have you, kind of be my guide and letting me know, what to do and how to do that. Again, I think this is what this is all about, connecting different communities and empowering the average person that hasn't had these tools to finally be able to leverage some of these tools again that just a select few have always had the ability to use and leverage. So I'm all for it. Again, if you guys are interested in finding out more about Coinecta, I'm going to go ahead and leave the links to all of their socials down in the description below. If you guys have any questions for Marty or myself, please make sure to leave those down in the comment section below. And last but not least, if you guys have enjoyed this video, please make sure to tap that like button. Marty, again, I want to thank you so much here for your time, again, for this brief introduction into what Coinecta is bringing to Cardano. This will definitely not be the last time that I have you on this channel, and I look forward to seeing what you guys are going to be bringing to Cardano. That said, you have a wonderful evening.